Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the second episode of the narrative, which takes place 3 years after the war with the Akatsuki, and Naruto is ready to gain a surprising new colleague to finally take the Chunnin examinations. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. Hanabi was confused. Who's the king? What could that crackpot have to give me? Most importantly, I think he wasn't just messing around about that bowl of ramen saving the village. What am I saying, but he did seem more serious than he had been all day. The way he acted when I called him Wart Sage. He seemed shattered for a moment, then he left. Oh Cammy, I think I might have messed up. I should follow him. At least I can find out who this so-called king is. She thought. Here is the money for my meal, she said as she put the money down before leaping off after Naruto. Hey wait, Tsuchi said. This is way too much. Besides, Naruto already paid for both of you. Oh well, it's a girlfriend of Naruto's. She'll probably be back tomorrow. He sighed. I'll give her the change then, I guess. These kids and their disrespect for money these days, he stated as he shook his head back and forth. Hanabi was already leaping from rooftop to rooftop looking for Naruto. Byakugan! She shouted as the veins in her temples budged. She searched for a huge mountain of chakra and she found it heading toward the ninja training school. Why would this king be at a school? She thought as she raced after the sage. Nearby, a Naruto clone smiled as he watched Hanabi chase after the real Naruto. Then the clone poofed and was gone. Naruto smiled. Oh, she's following me. Hee hee, I guess I shouldn't, but she does need to know we will be spending time apart sometimes. I don't need her following me like a lost puppy dog all the time, even if she is my teammate. He grinned mischievously as he ducked into classroom 3A of the Ninja Academy. It was near the end of the school day and most of the ninjas in training were doing a writing assignment and didn't notice Naruto coming into the room. Naruto, remember. Oh crap! I'd forgotten to come back and check on everyone's progress for 2 weeks. I hope they aren't mad. Naruto sneaked up to Iruka-sensei's desk and quietly said, Hey, Iruka-sensei. How have they been doing with the clone jutsu? Iruka jumped and let out a small sound. All the students looked up and the chaos ensued. In a flash, Naruto was surrounded by most of the students in a giant hug and they were all talking at the same time excitedly, but Naruto couldn't understand anyone because they were all too loud. He knew what most of them wanted was either, look what I can do now, or teach me another jutsu. Iruka got the look Naruto was giving him. He sighed. Okay Naruto, you can have the last 35 minutes of class, he said, defeated manner. The class cheered. Quite, Naruto said in a commanding voice. Then he grinned as they all went silent immediately. Okay, it's time for an ambush lesson. All the guys get over by the far wall out of sight of the door. Now all the girls stand right by door frame and I want you to tackle the next person through the door while yelling, I've got you, Sage Stalker. All the students did as they were told. The boys hid as best they could and the girls were along the wall waiting for the next person to come through the door. They didn't wait long till Hanabi tried to sneak through the door. We've got you, Sage Stalker. 12 girls yelled as they tackled the would-be stalker Hanabi as she came in. They all fell into a pile with the young Hyuga heiress on the bottom. There was a few seconds of muffled yells from Hanabi before Naruto said, Okay, good job girls. You caught my stalker. Now let her up. The sage was smiling ear to ear. Gradually, all the girls unpiled themselves off, or rather put out Hanabi. Wow, Sage Naruto, that's one pretty stalker. I hope I get stalkers like that when I become a sage. A boy said. Yeah, me too, said another boy. She looks a lot like that one girl you used to date, you know, the one with the really big. He had his hands open palmed and fingers out in front of his chest about 7 inches away, with his fingers making a grouping motion toward his chest. Rookie, and you pervert! One of the girls shouted before hammer fisting him to the floor. Naruto was trying to hold in his laughter. I know most girls think that was perverted, but I have to admit it's hard not to notice that about her. He thought. Okay, no fighting, everyone head for the training field. I'll be there in a few minutes to train you all, but first I have to deal with my stalker," he said, trying unsuccessfully to suppress a giggle. The students filed out very happily. That's when Naruto got a good look at Hanabi. Her perfect dark brown hair was a total mess. She had a lipstick smear across her left cheek from one of the other girls, and she was fuming. "Naruto," she said through clenched teeth, "I'm going to get you for this. Here I came to make sure I didn't upset you, and you do this indignity to me." She picked herself off the floor. "Oh, I see." He grinned. "You just couldn't get enough of me, so you decided to stalk me, and you got caught, and now you're mad at me?" he teased. Hanabi had it. She charged him and tried to strike him on the left side of his face with her gentle fist. Naruto crouched slightly and dodged just enough so that her open palm shot over his left shoulder, and the rest of her followed as she overshot. Naruto grabbed Hanabi's curvy hips to stop her from crashing into him. When Hanabi finally stopped herself, she was right in Naruto's face with her left eye staring right into his left eye. She realized that she felt Naruto's breath less than an inch away from her lips. Hanabi panicked. "Oh God, we almost kissed. Not good, not good. I don't want him thinking I'm that kind of girl," she thought as her heart began to race. Naruto smiled at the situation and said, "Oh, trying to seduce me now. I see." His right arm at her hip snaked around the small of her back and pushed her right up against his chest. "Two can play at that game," he said, seductively while gazing deep into her eyes. His other arm started snaking it way up her spine. Naruto slowly traced the crevices of her spine till he was almost at her neck. Naruto thought, "Wow, she really easily turned on. I've barely touched her and her rock-hard nipples are poking me in the chest. Oh Kami, his touch, it's setting my body on fire. I have to stop trembling. I have to push him away," she thought as her heart turned into a raging monster intent on breaking her ribcage wide open. Naruto trailed his hands across the bare skin of her neck. The result was immediate. The hair on her neck stood up on end, and she suddenly sprang up, goosebumps all over her body. She was nearly panting and trying to hide it. Naruto was already breaking through her shield of nobility. The sage reached the base of her hair and gently wiggled his fingers into her thick locks of hair, ever so slightly dragging his nails against her scalp. Her trembles turned to near spasms. "Oh Kami, make him stop. No, don't make him stop. My head says no, but my body keeps saying yes. This is so frustrating," she mentally warred with herself. Naruto took his painfully slow time wiggling his way through her hair until his hand was firmly supporting the back of her head. "Oh crap, he's caught me. I can't turn my head or anything. Honestly though, I really can't wait for him to kiss me. Please hurry. What am I saying? I just meet the guy. But I can't help it. I hope he kisses me soon. I don't know how much long I can keep from making too much noise," she warred on. Naruto knew he was in complete control now. It was actually obvious, as Hanabi had wrapped her trembling thighs around one of Naruto's legs without realizing it and was squeezing his leg rather tightly into her private area. Naruto leaned her head back and softly dragged his lips from the crook of her neck to her earlobe. She didn't shy away, she actually leaned toward him while he was doing this. He then softly dragged his lips across her left cheek down across to the edge of her mouth. He brushed his lips across hers a few times without kissing her, but he could tell she was moving her lips every time he did this, expecting it. Naruto slowly dragged his lips back to her earlobe and gave her a playful bite. "Tell me what you want," he said in a deep, seductive voice. Her thighs tightened and trembled harder in response as she bit her lip. I want. Ergum!" Irika-sensei cleared his throat loudly. Naruto looked over and saw his former sensei with a scroll in hands covering his face and over a foot above his head, even as his head was crouched down on his desk. The scene had obviously become too much for him to bear any longer, and he was using the scroll to block his view of the uncomfortable foreplay happening in front of him. Hanabi started. She looked at herself and turned beet red at the way she was straddling Naruto's leg. She quickly released Naruto and promptly fought her wobbly legs to stand before failing on her butt. Naruto laughed at her feeble attempt to stand. It's okay, the jelly legs go away in about 10 minutes. You really are a cherry getting that way from so little. He teased and laughed again. She blushed even redder. Yeah. How long does the feeling of wanting you jump you last, because it's a lot worse than the wiggly legs. She thought in frustration that Iruka was in the room and stopped him, yet happy he did at the same time. Naruto, the class is waiting for you. Iruka hinted loudly while still covering his face with a scroll. Right, Iruka-sensei. Hanabi, remember you're to be at the training ground in 45 minutes. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. He yelled as 30 shadow clones appeared and they all filed out like a troop of soldiers to a cheering class of students. Iruka finally put down his scroll to see Hanabi, barely keeping herself upright, plopped on her knees lazily. Oh Kami, aren't you Hyuga heiress? He said worriedly. Her head was hanging limply on her shoulders and she gave him a half turn of the head and said, Yeah, that's me, I'm going to take a nap. As she collapsed in a heap on the floor, out like light. Kami, I almost think I should have watched so I knew what I'm getting myself into. I've got to take her home. I just hope Hayashi isn't there to see her like this. He thought as he cringed. The 30 Narutos we all teaching the students. Most of them were learning the clone jutsu, a few were starting to walk up trees, but 2 were way ahead of the class. A fiery red-haired, emerald-eyed boy that wore his hair in thick spikes like Naruto's hair named Rukian. The other was Haruki, a pretty blue-eyed blonde that wore her hair in a long braided ponytail that was just starting to get her womanly curves. Both of them on the outside were bitter rivals. Rukian didn't want to be beaten by a girl and Haruki thought Rukian was a screw-up and didn't want to be considered at his level. Okay, I'm going to teach you ninjutsu today, he said before being cut off by their cheers. Yes. Finally, Rukian said as he threw his fist in the air. Silence! Naruto shouted as the both became dead still and absolutely quiet. Naruto said, I had to get the Hokage's permission to teach you two this ninjutsu. She agreed to let me teach one of you, but I had to persuade her to let me teach the other. AWW man. I don't want to be in her shadow. Rukian stated loudly while pointing at Haruki. AHHHA, so you admit it? She yelled while pointing at him. I admit nothing, he said as he crossed his arms and stuck his tongue out at her. Naruto thought. Kinda funny, but Rukian was the one I got approval from first and I had to fight to get Haruki's. Oh well, no sense letting them know that. Naruto pulled out 3 blue water balloons and dropped them on the ground. He reached down and picked one up. He held it out in front of him. The surface of the water balloon got very bumpy, then exploded. He reached down and picked up the other 2 balloons and tossed them to his students. Now it's your turn. He smiled. This ought to keep them off my butt for a while, he thought. Iruka-sensei managed to drop Hanabi off at the Hyuga house without a problem by telling them she sparred with Naruto and he used Jinjutsu to put her to sleep. Kami, what a lame excuse. Naruto and Jinjutsu shouldn't even be in the same sentence, he thought while hiding his face with his hand in shame. Hanabi was lying on her bed some time later and she could hear the water in the bathroom running. She knew the servant was running the bath for her, but she didn't want to get up. She was too relaxed and just wanted to sleep in her soft bed. The bathroom door opened and stream followed out into her bedroom. The bath is ready for you, Hanabi, and I've set out a fresh change of clothes for you. Don't take long, Sage Naruto expects you at the training grounds in 20 minutes. The servant said as she left the room. She groaned, pulling a pillow over her face. How can I face him? I practically humped his leg. Wait, I think I did hump his leg. She blushed. She threw the pillow off her face and then headed to the bathroom to clean herself up. She touched her cheek in front of the mirror where the tree branch had struck her, leaving a mark. It was gone, like someone had healed it. She discounted it. Maybe it didn't hit me as hard as I thought. She showered quickly and put on the fresh cloths the servant had set out for her and headed off to the training ground with dread in her thoughts. When she arrived, she stood on her normal tree. She saw the normal scene. Hundreds on Naruto's doing everything from walking on water to practicing the pervert snuggle. So are you going to come down and train, or are you going to stick to the peeping Tom routine? Naruto stated from right next to her. Hanabi jumped so badly she started to fall from the tree she was in. Naruto grabbed her, wrapping both arms around her, and gently leaned into her fall. They both flipped over slowly in the air, landing perfectly upright on the ground. Damn that show off. I don't care what he does, I'm still telling him off for pulling that stunt at the academy. Naruto let her go and headed back to the center of the training ground with a smile. Now wait a minute. The young Hyuga yelled. What the hell was that at the academy you pulled? Maybe I should let my father or the Hokage know how you assaulted me. Naruto turned back around and almost instantly closed the gap of 25 feet between them. Hanabi wasn't expecting Naruto to move that fast, and it took her a second to refocus her eyes on him. Naruto's brilliant sapphire eyes were now cold orbs of steel, and his look was so stern that she could have sworn it was her father using a hinge jutsu to look like Naruto. Go ahead and tell them of your failure. His voice was sharp and accusing. Failure. She stammered, outraged at his words. That's right, Hanabi. You tried to strike me, so you started our duel. You lost, not to ninjutsu or jinjutsu or even taijutsu. You lost to simple seduction. How many times do you think I could have killed you during our duel? Even a clumsy civilian with a kunai could have killed you a dozen times without a problem at the way you reacted to my movements. He spat, drenched in venom. Hanabi's face went blank. She was going to tell him off, and she was the one getting told off. Oh, Kami! I think that was a test, and I failed horribly. Naruto continued. It took all of what? 8 seconds before you were willing me to continue? Before Iruka-sensei interrupted, I was about 2 seconds from drop you on your butt anyway. Hanabi didn't move her blank look, but she blushed a shade of bright red. Naruto said, one of the most basic tactics is to hinge yourself to look like a teammate and infiltrate their 3-man squad while one of their members are away to catch the other 2 members with their guard down. How easy would it be to slip some poison into their food when they aren't looking, when you think they're a friend and you're not watching them like a foe? His steeled expression still locked onto her eyes. Think, Hanabi, how it would look on this village if the Hyuga heiress was killed by a cute guy with a dazzling smile and a poison needle. He stated. Hanabi hung her head in shame. He's right, he beat me with one of the first things any ninja is taught. Know your enemy and know your allies. Naruto thought. I think I was a bit too hard on her, but it's for her own good and the good of the team. Kami knows I get enough attention from horny young girls already. I don't need one in this team making things worse. Naruto knew this all too well. Once the village realized Naruto was one of the most powerful ninjas in history and that he saved the village a number of times, the girls just started coming out of the woodwork trying to date him. Naruto even had his own female fan club. At first he thought it was so cool. He soon realized that having 50 horny young women chasing after you got old really fast. He started dating Ion just to get them to leave him alone back then. He asked her to pretend to be his girlfriend because she was one of the few girls in town that seemed to hold no romantic interest for him, just to get so peace and quiet. The only reprieve he'd gotten from this attention over the last 2 years though was when he dated Sakura. The rest of the girls in the village were far too scared of the Hokage's apprentice to make a move on the sage when they were dating. Hanabi lost in her thoughts. I'm such a fool for even thinking he liked me that way. How is it so many guys tried to court me from other noble houses lately? And I turned them all down with barely a thought, but a few hours with Naruto and I'm humping his leg? A fine heiress I'm going to be. She thought sarcastically. She sighed. I already know the answer though, all my quarters wanted to date the Hyuga heir, not me, Hanabi Hyuga. Naruto never looked at me that way, he just sees me as Hanabi. I guess that's why I just can't seem to get my guard up around him. The quarters were so stupid sometimes. Some 40-year-old lord from lesser clan actually tried to get father to set up an arranged marriage with me when I was 12 years old for the good of the village. Pshhe are right, more like the good of their clan. The Hyuga clan is already the most powerful in the village. Who would we arrange a marriage with that would benefit us? The Hokage herself? Thankfully the Hyuga clan doesn't set up arranged marriages with lesser clans. Father wants to preserve our Byakugan. He already told me I could pick my suitor, but father wouldn't approve of anyone but the strongest of ninja for the heir of the clan. Hanabi felt two strong hands grip her shoulders. She looked up at Naruto. His steel eyes had changed back to their normal blue and he looked at her in concern. "I'm sorry," he said earnestly. "I'm being too hard on you. After all, we did just get put on the same team. What did I expect?" No. You're right," she admitted while shaking her head back and forth. "I'm sorry I lost control like that. I just wasn't expecting you to be testing me like that, Sage Naruto," she said with a bow of her head respectfully. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Maybe she is a noble after all. She just called me by my title. Admittedly, I normally don't like it when other girls refer to me like that, but this time it was appropriate. He thought. Well, I didn't set out to test you like that. I expected you to push me away and get embarrassed so you wouldn't want to fight anymore. I wasn't expecting your reaction. When I realized how into it you were, I was going to drop you, but Iruka-sensei broke the moment first. He confessed. "Again, I'm sorry," she said, still blushing and looking away from him. Naruto smiled. "It's okay, it's forgotten, but now we need to get started training. I don't suppose you're really gifted with making clones?" he asked curiously. "Well, not really, we only use them for distractions sometimes and we never hold them long. We don't really focus on building the chakra for using jutsu like other ninjas. We focus more on pinpoint control so that we can do great amounts of damage with very little chakra," she said. He said and thought, finally taking his hands off her shoulders. "I guess I should teach you the shadow clone jutsu first. That way you can train like me and Konohamaru and get stronger much faster," he said, thinking out loud. "Sage Naruto, I don't think that jutsu is going to help me when my chakra reserves are so low. It would probably burn up 1/5 of my chakra to make one clone. Isn't it also a forbidden jutsu? I think you need to get permission to teach it," she said shyly. "Well, it is forbidden, but not for the reasons you might think, and no, I don't need to get permission to teach it. There isn't anyone in the world that knows more about that jutsu than me, but you have to promise me something before I teach it to you," he stated seriously while looking at her. "Isn't it just a jutsu to make a clone that has physical form? I see the advantages, but why would I need to promise you something before you teach me it?" "And what do I need to promise?" she asked, eyeing him curiously. He smiled at her. "The shadow clone jutsu is forbidden because of its secret. If you learn to use it the way I have and the way a few others have, you can become a lot more powerful in a short period of time, but there is a huge risk. Before I tell you any more, you have to promise me, in a contract, that you will not tell anyone its secret as long as either me or Konohamaru is alive," he said sternly. Hanabi took some time to think. "It sure sounds like he's pulling my leg about it being such a powerful jutsu. I mean, what's the big deal? It's just a clone with physical form. Sure, you can make it 2-on-1 in a fight, but it cuts your chakra in half. I know it's a forbidden jutsu, so there has to be a reason for it. If it was just a physical clone, then it wouldn't be forbidden. I think I should speak with my father before signing any contract, Sage Naruto. I've got my clan to think about too. I can't just go signing any ninja contract that binds me. If I did that too much, then it would be harder to rule the clan when my time comes," she said, slightly disappointed at her predicament. Naruto looked at her for a moment before scratching the back of his head unknowingly. "Yeah, guess I didn't think of that," he admitted. He thought for a few moments. "Well, how about for now I teach you the shadow clone jutsu on your word alone that you will not tell anyone else how it's done, but I will not teach you the secret of what makes it forbidden until you have your father's permission," he said as he hammered his fist into his open hand at his idea. Comma. She thought blankly and then sighed in defeat. "I guess. I promise not to tell anyone how to do the shadow clone jutsu or reveal anything I learn about it," she promised. Naruto smiled at her happily. "Good. You already know how to make a clone using just chakra, right?" he asked Hanabi. She was starting to grin. "Yes, Sage Naruto," she stated. Naruto moved behind her and moved her into the correct position to perform the shadow clone jutsu. "Now I want you to only focus on your shadow. For a normal clone you just make an illusion with your chakra. For this one you're going to use your shadow to make a physical clone that will have half your chakra," he said. Naruto moved back in front of her and got into the same position. "Now you're literally going to make another copy of you, but you can't split your own body. That would of course kill you. So what would you use as a template to make a clone?" he asked her. "OHHH, that's why it's called the Shadow Clone Jutsu. That is so simple. I wonder why no one else seemed to figure it out before," she thought as her eyes light up. She smiled. "My shadow, of course it makes so much sense to me now. I always thought you used shadow chakra to make them." Naruto laughed. "Yeah, that's what everyone thinks, but nope, it's just plain old chakra. Now remember, while you're making your clone you have to give it half your chakra," he said sternly while waving his finger at her. "First though I want you to watch me do the jutsu with your Byakugan and pay close attention to how the clone is formed," he said. Hanabi, still in the jutsu form, activated her Byakugan and watched Naruto, then looked away. "Naruto, there is something you should know before doing that," she said. Naruto looked at her, puzzled, with his hands in the crossed-fingered pose. "What's that, Hanabi-chan?" he said curiously. "Well, you know you have a lot of chakra, right? To the Byakugan you're actually like a near blinding light of chakra. Do you think you could make a shadow clone with a chakra level closer to mine and do the jutsu?" she asked awkwardly. "Oh, I didn't realize that." "Yes, I can do that. Shadow clone jutsu," he said with an innocent look. A Naruto clone appeared and the real Naruto ran about 200 feet away. "Okay, watch closely. I'm going to try forming it as slowly as possible without it failing, but that's still going to be half a second at most. Ready?" the clone asked. "Yes," she said respectfully. "Shadow clone jutsu," the clone said. The clone did the jutsu a few more times before Hanabi spoke. "I think I see, but I'm not sure. It looked like you created the chakra network, then pumped it full of chakra and the clone appeared. It didn't seem to use the shadow as a template per se. It looked more like you used it as a rough outline." The clone Naruto eyes widened in shock. "You saw all that by seeing it just 3 times? Then the clone smiled ear to ear. "You're going to get this a lot faster than Konohamaru did." The clone cheered, then dispersed. The real Naruto came back with the same smile as she deactivated her Byakugan. "Okay, give it a try, Hanabi-chan," he said. She stood still, concentrating her chakra into her shadow with her hands in the tiger seal before shouting, "Shadow clone jutsu!" There was a puff of smoke, then nothing. She got flustered. "Shadow clone jutsu!" There was another puff of smoke and there was a clone there, but it looked nothing like Hanabi. The clone's head was way too narrow, its shoulders were 4 feet wide and its waist 5 inches wide, its hips were about right and its feet were half the size it should be. The result, the clone toppled over backwards and flung its limbs like a turtle on its back. Naruto normally would have been laughing at this point, but Hanabi did something dangerous without knowing. Hanabi was panting on her knees, sweating, when Naruto made a single clone and then bolted to her. "Hanabi-chan, don't release the jutsu," he said as he reached her and grabbed her in a backwards hug. "Naruto, I don't know how much longer I can hold this jutsu, it's eating up the remains of my chakra pretty fast," she said, panting. "I know, Hanabi-chan," he said with worry in his voice as he started charging his heartstring with chakra and then pushed it out into Hanabi's heartstring. Within seconds she began to breathe normally and held the clone jutsu with no trouble. Hanabi was tingling all over as the chakra Naruto sent into her was filling her up like a white light. "Naruto, from how your heart is pounding on my back I'm guessing I messed up." She cringed while waiting for Naruto to scold her again. "You sure my heart's still there? I could have sworn it leaped out of my chest when you tried to do the shadow clone jutsu with one half the chakra you started with," he said, very worried. "No," he began again once he caught his breath. "I messed up," he sighed. "I should have explained the risk of the jutsu better to you before having you try it. I think Konohamaru has spoiled me as a teacher," he stated as he dragged Hanabi over to a nearby tree and leaned his back against it with her in his arms and her sitting between his legs. "Naruto? What do you mean about Konohamaru and how did I mess up the jutsu? Why didn't you want me to release it right away?" she asked. Naruto said, "Well, first about what you did wrong it should be obvious. If you transfer half your chakra into a clone that fails you lose half your chakra, then you did it again cutting your chakra into 1/4. What I failed to tell you is that until you've mastered the jutsu you will lose a substantial amount of chakra dispelling it. I can't tell you why until you sign the contract though," he stated as he tightened his hold onto her into a brief hug of relief. I think I really worried him. That hug was too honest and caring to just be a casual hug. I think I almost put myself into chakra exhaustion trying that jutsu 2 times in a row, she thought. As for Konohamaru, you know he's the grandson of the 3rd Hokage, right? Well, he actually started with 3 times more chakra than anyone his age. He was poor at learning to use it, mainly because he kept skipping class. Naruto smiled before continuing. He used to attack his grandfather all the time intending to off him, not seriously mind you, and become Hokage himself. Everyone used to call him honorable grandson this and honorable grandson that. What he actually was a spoiled brat that no one would discipline until he smarted off to me and I clocked him over the head. He started stalking me for a while and telling me that I'd better respect him, that he's going to be Hokage someday. I told him something that his sensei Ebisu had been lying to him about, he said. Hanabi curiously asked. And what would that be? He stated. There are no shortcuts to becoming Hokage. He stopped cutting class after I told him that, and the next time Ebisu told him that his training was the only shortcut he had to becoming Hokage. He told him that there were no shortcuts to becoming Hokage and that I had taught him that. Ever since then I've been teaching him. He was the first person that liked me for who I was, Naruto, and not. He stopped before saying anything about QB. What everyone thought I was, he said a bit sadly. Hanabi was very curious. What did they think you were? She questioned. Naruto gazed at the back of her honey and cherry blossom smelling hair before answering. I'm sorry, Hanabi-chan, you just aren't ready for that answer yet, he stated with sadness in his voice. He started speaking again. I think it's time you released your shadow clone, he said. She released the jutsu with a puff of smoke and suddenly felt a bit more tired than she was before. She then asked, what was that tingly jutsu you used on me anyway? Naruto looked at her for a minute. Oh, that wasn't a jutsu per se. I guess if I call it anything it's a medical jutsu gone wrong, he said with a reserved smile. Would you care to explain that? I don't exactly get what you're saying, she stated as she leaned back on him. He sighed. Another secret from my past. Okay, but this is the last one, only Sakura-chan and the Hokage know about this one, mind you. He took a few deep breaths like he was remembering something painful he hadn't got over yet. We were fighting 2 very strong ninjas. While I defeated one of them, the other managed to deal Sakura a mortal wound. I lost control, for the second time in my life, unwillingly. I obliterated him and half the countryside before regaining my senses. When I finally did, I saw Sakura-chan. She was covered in blood from a chest wound no one could hope to survive, he said very sadly. It was then that I realized all my jutsus were for killing. I didn't have a single one for saving a life. I only had the power to destroy life, not save it. I begged my inner self that had incredible healing power to save her. It told me that I was the only one that could bear its terrible force and actually be healed from it. I didn't care, it seemed hopeless anyway at the time, and begged it to at least try. Its power surged for me, healing her insides and burning off the skin on her torso. It sent her into a state of shock. My inner self was right. Even if it healed her insides, the damage would be too great for her to bear. She convulsed violently as her body was dying. I did the only thing I could think of. I tried to mimic her healing technique. I stood over her with my hands on her charred chest, willing her to heal while pour my chakra into her, but it seemed to do no good. The more chakra I poured into her, the less she convulsed. It didn't seem like she was getting better. She seemed to be getting farther into the beyond. I honestly was planning to follow her into death. That's when she lifted her hand, and started healing herself. She was in unimaginable pain, but she was healing herself. My hands were shaking as she was pouring healing chakra into her wound to save her life, and I was pouring my chakra into her. She had closed the wound just before I blacked out. I ended up in a coma for 6 days, and when I woke up, Tsunade was furious with me. She demanded to know who had taught me that forbidden jutsu. I explained that I was only trying to mimic Sakura-chan's healing jutsu. She scolded me, telling me that what I did wasn't a healing jutsu. It was a raw chakra transfer, and it was very dangerous. She told me that I connected myself to Sakura-chan's heartstring chakra line, essentially linking our chakra networks. If she would have died, I would have felt it like I had died and lost my life due to the shock. She told me that even in the hands of a master of medical jutsu it was dangerous, because the patient would suck the medic dry of chakra trying to stay alive even if they were out cold, killing both the medic and the wounded ninja. She also told me that doing a raw chakra transfer was a huge drain on a person's chakra, as most of the chakra in the transfer is lost. She told me that it would take about 4 times the chakra that would normally be in someone's body to bring them back to full chakra levels. After that, I begged her to teach me medical ninjutsu. She laughed at me until she figured out I was serious. She taught me healing ninjutsu, but told me I'd never be anywhere near her or Sakura-chan's level. I can close most life-threatening wounds enough to save their life until a more qualified medic can look them over. I asked her to teach me more, but she refused, telling me I had too much chakra to control to learn anything else. I found a way around that though. I made a clone with 1/100th of my chakra. She still refused to teach me and told me I was too careless and reckless to learn surgical ninjutsu or anti-poison ninjutsu. She also made the whole hospital staff promise to never teach me any more medical ninjutsu, especially Sakura-chan. He finished. Wow, it's like he'll tell me anything about himself. Well, anything that doesn't pertain to forbidden jutsu or one of his so-called secrets. I almost forgot. I was so wrapped up in his story. That jutsu he used on me that might have killed him if I followed his story right. She cringed. Naruto? She said awkwardly. Did you do something really dangerous for me? No, Hanabi-chan. The raw chakra transfer is one of the few medical jutsus where having a massive amount of chakra isn't a hindrance, it actually helps, he stated. She let out the breath she had been holding and relive. Good, I'd hate to think what the Hokage would do to me if you got hurt because of me. Hyuga heir or not, I don't think she'd care from what I saw at the restaurant today. I think she'd kill me, she said, a bit worried. I don't think so. She probably would have just punched you a few times. Wait, that might kill you, he teased. She gave a worried look over her shoulder at the sage and said, Hey, come on. Don't even joke about that. Naruto laughed. Hanabi suddenly became self-conscious about being in the arms of a man she hardly had known for 3 hours. Hanabi moved off his chest and sat down right in front, eyeing him carefully. She narrowed her eyes at him and asked, Why is it when it comes to me all your jutsus seem to involve snuggling? She continued to eye him. Naruto tilted his head and gave her a thoughtful look. I told you the jutsu question was the last question I was going to answer, he said. She retorted with a grin. But you answered the "did you do anything dangerous?" question. He smiled right back at her. That was just clarification on the first question I was already answering. Besides, don't you know my Nindo? She rolled her eyes and signed. I don't back down and I never go back on my word, she stated, a bit frustrated. His smile returned. Good, then you know we have to get back to training too. First we need to talk about your self-image though, he said. She gave him a questioning look. My self-image? What about it? She asked, a bit puzzled. Well, he started. Your clones, when you first try this jutsu or any other clone jutsu where you make a physical clone, reveals a lot about the user's self-image. With yours the head was too narrow, meaning you want your face to be narrower. The shoulders were way too big. This is a common mistake for a girl who thinks her breasts are too small. They tend to make the whole shoulder to stomach area bigger. Need I go on with your waist and feet? I think they are self-explanatory at this point. The only part of you that looked remotely right was your hips. Tell me, Hanabi-chan, who is it that you feel is prettier than you and that you want to look like? He said thoughtfully. Hanabi got visibly nervous at this question. She wrung her hands and her eyes darted from side to side. This was obviously a touchy subject for her. Well, she stammered. It's not so much the question, it wouldn't be a problem at all if it was a girl, but telling a guy. A handsome one at that, my insecurities. It's embarrassing. I'm not that comfortable with him yet. She mentally screamed to herself. It's Hinata, isn't it? He stated flatly. She blushed. Cammy! Is it obvious to him just from my clone, or is this another one of his weird abilities? She spoke meekly. Yes. Naruto sighed. That's something I'll never understand about girls. You dress yourselves up to be as physically attractive as possible, wanting huge breasts and a tone, but then you chastise the guys for looking when you catch them, but at the same time you seem to like it. He said. So tell me, why do you want to look like Hinata? Do you really want a bunch of horny fools drooling at the sight of you? He stated bluntly. She spoke shyly. Well, not exactly, but when you're walking next to someone and they all look at her that way you feel inadequate, so to speak. Sometimes I want them to look at me that way and hope they want to get to know me, she said shyly. Naruto rolled his eyes at her. So let me get this straight, you want to look like a sex goddess and have a guy love you for your mind? Do you realize how insane that is? He said. She glared at him. Well, it's better than having them like you just for you mind and ending up in the just friends zone, which always happens if the guy doesn't see you as sexually attractive in some way. She spat. Naruto stared her down for a moment. There is no way you'd have experience of something like that at your age. Whose words are you spouting? He said, eyeing her like he was boring into her soul. MW, well, a long time ago, I talked, she said before he cut her off. Ino, he stated flatly. She stammered, and yes, I talked to Ino, she said shyly after being caught. Naruto signed, knowing what he had to explain. Look, I know Ino better than you think. I ought to, she was my first real love. The whole way she went about getting a guy to like her was total wrong. He sighed again. Just like I've told you. Let me explain, men are simple. You show them as sex goddesses, they see as sex goddesses and want her sexually. You show them someone that they have a lot in common with and who's easy to talk to, they will like you and they may end up as just a friend. Where girls make their mistake is they get insecure about a relationship and try to use the one thing that they know will get the guy to think of them, sex appeal. Which end up leading to sex or the guy not liking you at all because you're a tease-dot. What if 3 years down the road when you already have a child together you realize that you both make each other miserable? You honestly think he's going to leave you? Of course not, he's not going to abandon his child. Then you have trapped him and you'll realize one day that maybe someone else was perfect for you, but you went and dragged sex into a relationship before you knew if you wanted to spend the rest of your life with that person, all because you got insecure," he said knowingly. "Cammy," he rambles on like he's my father telling me why not to have sex before I'm ready, who knew the village playboy had such a tight moral views on the matter. Hanabi thought. She spoke. "I understand your view, but I still don't completely agree with you." She squinted at him. He laughed. "Fine, ask Hinata about how she feels about all those guys." Staring at her. "Then I want you to go eat breakfast over at Nara's house and tell me if you want to look sexier," he stated. She blinked a few times in confusion. "The Naras? Isn't that Shikamaru's parents' house?" she asked. He grinned. "Yes, that's the one," he said. "I think it would be good for you to see two people much later in life that had sex too quickly." Naruto got up off the ground and said, "Enough relationship talk." He waited for Hanabi to get up. She pushed herself up off the ground knowing he was about to make her try that jutsu again. "It's time to get back to training, but before you try again." Naruto walked over to her and placed his hands on her shoulders and looked deep into her eyes. "Remember, you beautiful just the way you are," he said slowly. Hanabi blushed dark red at him saying it like that. She got back into the cross tiger seal and tried again. They spent the next 3 hours with her trying the shadow clone jutsu and Naruto recharging her with chakra. She was making good progress, but her clones still weren't perfect. The face was still a bit too narrow and breasts were slightly larger than they should be, but the rest of the clone looked good. Naruto yawned. "Okay, that's enough for today, Hanabi-chan," he said sleepy. Hanabi frowned. "I can still keep going." She eyed him. Naruto yawned again. "Maybe you can, but I can't. I've refilled your chakra network over 30 times now. I'm running out of chakra," he said sleepily. Hanabi yawned. "Darn you! Your yawn is infecting me, now I feel all sleepy too," she said, feeling her body slowly throb as she had stopped for a moment. "I'm going to be sore tomorrow, that's for sure," she thought. "Oh, you said you had something you wanted to give me. What was it you wanted to give me?" she asked. "Oh yeah, I forgot to get it from my house because someone decided to stalk me," he teased. Her eyes shot open and her face got flushed. "I was not stalking. I was just following you," she said awkwardly. "You were following with the intent of not being seen, that's stalking," he said flatly. Hanabi wanted to argue but was too tired. "Naruto, I'm going to go home now to get cleaned up," she said. Naruto stood up and finally released the clone he made before dashing off to charge Hanabi with chakra the first time. The sage became noticeably less fatigued after that. "Hanabi, before you go, would you like to have dinner at my place tonight?" he asked. Her eyes went wide from shock. "Okay, I can write off most of the other things I've misunderstood, but that defiantly sounded like a date request, maybe more than a date," she thought with both a bit of excitement and a lot of dread. Are you asking me out on a date?" she asked, stunned. Naruto was shocked for a second, then laughed. "Sorry, I didn't mean for it to sound that way," he admitted as he rubbed the back of his neck in slight embarrassment. "It's just that I've gotten used to cooking for two because Konohamaru normally comes over for dinner, and I forgot to get that item I wanted to give you. I guess that did sound bad, asking you over for dinner when we hardly know each other. I'm sorry I brought it up," he said innocently with a short laugh. "I'll just give it to you tomorrow whenever you show up to train," the sage said and turned to leave. "Crap, don't just stand there. The guy has been feeding you his chakra all day and teaching you. He used a forbidden jutsu just because he was worried about me. Think fast. Ask him something, anything." Her thoughts raced. What are you making for dinner?" she asked slightly coyly. Naruto turned around to see her acting shyly. He eyed her carefully. "Nothing too fancy, I'm not that great of a cook. Probably some sushi rolls and miso soup. It all depends on what one of my clones brings back from fishing." he said. She smiled sweetly. If it's okay with my father, I'll join you. Where's your house at? She asked. Naruto laughed. Did you forget lunch, Hanabi-chan? Lord Hyuga isn't going to remember his own name until tomorrow, and he probably won't want to be alive till later that evening, he said. Oh, I forgot about that. I can't come over without his permission. She gave him a sad, disappointed look. I'm sorry, Naruto. Actually, you can, Hanabi-chan. You just tell your handler servant that you're visiting your new teammate to discuss tactics and have dinner. It's way better than some of the things Hinata told her handler to come visit me, he said. She was stunned for a moment. No way? I can do that? I never knew that, she stated in disbelief. Naruto eyed her for a few seconds. Well, Hinata did. You didn't think your father was never going to let her make friends and visit, did you? I'm sure it's the same with you. Just ask your handler, I bet she says it's okay, he said. I can't promise anything, but I will ask her if it's okay, she said in an unbelieving tone of voice. By the way, where do you live? You never answered that, she asked questioningly. Oh, that, you know the old ghost compound? He asked. Yes, I know that place. It's supposed to be haunted, but I went inside the grounds there with my father one time, and there is a really beautiful mansion inside. I asked my father when I was 5 years old. When I get married, can you buy me that house as a wedding present? She laughed. He told me that all the money in the village wouldn't buy that house. That house would remain empty till the heir of one of the village's greatest heroes came of age to live there. I'm not sure I believed him, but it is a really nice place. Not what most people seem to think it was. So you live near there? She asked. Actually, Hanabi-chan, it doesn't look so haunted anymore and hasn't for 3 years. That's actually my home, Naruto said, a bit embarrassed that she had already seen his house. Her face faltered. You live there? So, is the story about it being the home of a hero of the village my father told me true? She stammered. Naruto smiled. Yes, that's true. I am the heir of a great hero of this village, and he did leave me the house, but I'm not ready to tell you who he was just yet. So please don't ask me about it, he said. Hanabi just smiled at him. Okay, I won't ask you about that, but tell me, is it as nice inside as the outside is? She asked. I guess you'll have to get permission to come over for dinner to find out, he teased. She scowled at him playfully. What time is dinner? She asked. Naruto thought she looked like a kid in a candy shop. Well, it's about 4 p.m. now, so I'd guess shortly after 6 p.m. Remember to tell your handler first. I don't need half your clan searching the village for you. He eyed her critically. She smiled a bit overexcited. Okay, I'll go talk to Shizen and ask her, she said, and headed off for the Hyuga compound. Goodbye, Sage Naruto, I hope to see you later, she said with a wave. She's been so reserved, save for when she has been shocked by me, but I tell her where I live and she acts like a 5-year-old after her father told her they were going out for ice cream. She really a lot prettier than she thinks she is. I just hope she doesn't have Hinata's faults. Well, I guess I should visit father's grave and tell him I've got another student, he thought. Hanabi raced home as fast as her sore body would carry her. She reached the main compound and started searching for Shizen. It took the young Hyuga a full 10 minutes before finally finding her handler in the laundry room. Shizen, Hanabi called, and finally someone replied. I'm in here. The voice of a middle-aged woman emanated from the nearby laundry room. Hanabi walked into the room with a slightly puzzled look of her face. What are you doing in here, Shizen? It's not your job to do laundry, she stated in confusion. Shizen was on her knees in front of huge washing basins scrubbing clothes. Shizen was in her late 30s with straight brown hair pulled up in a bun over her head with brown eyes, and she looked too thin. She was wearing an old brown jumpsuit. Shizen replied. Oh, Keikai is sick, so I'm filling in with some of the maid duties till she's better. What is it that you need? Hanabi was a bit nervous and shyly asked. You know I just got put on a squad, right? Well, Naruto asked if I wanted to have dinner at his house and I was wondering if it would be okay if I go. Shizen eyed her for a long moment that made Hanabi a bit uncomfortable. Did he ask you out on a date already? She stated bluntly, which was very unlike her. Hanabi became slightly nervous. No, well, I thought that's what he was asking at first, but come to find out he is just used to cooking for 2 people and it seems Konohamaru isn't coming over tonight. She said, moved defensively, then she wanted to appear. Shizen continued to eye Hanabi, not sure if she should believe her. She bluntly asked, Do you like him? Hanabi's eyes widened at her question before saying, What? She repeated louder and slower, Do you like him? Hanabi blushed a light shade of pink. We only just meet. Well, I did see him a few times when he was dating Hinata, but we never talked much more than a greeting, she said. Hanabi continued. He's probably the strangest person I've ever met, to be honest. One minute he's a total goofball. The next he's a wise teacher, then he's a concerned, overprotective, fatherly person, then he'll be a easy to talk to friend that I feel like I've known much longer than just today. His personality seems to change like the wind, making him impossible to read. You should see the way he uses his chakra. At lunch he made a fan out of chakra so dense it was visible, all because I said it was a little hot in the restaurant. It's like he can invent a jutsu for any task, fighting or mundane. In all honesty, I'd just like to spend some time getting, well, used to him. I keep getting shocked at everything he does. He is just so weird and interesting. She finished. Shizen's scrutinizing gaze softened. Well, you can go. If you can explain these, she said, holding up the underwear Hanabi was wearing earlier that day. They had a sizable stain in them from the sage's seduction. Hanabi blushed such a deep red that her face was almost purple. She stammered. That's not what you think. Erg! She said, frustrated. Shizen gave her a knowing look. Naruto pulled a prank on me for spying on him, she confessed. Shizen eyed her, holding the panties up on the end of her pointer finger. This is a prank? She said, clearly unconvinced. Hanabi rolled her eyes. No, that's not it. I ended up losing my temper and I tried to hit him because of his prank, she said. Shizen's eyes widened with shock. You tried to strike a sage? Do you realize just how powerful he is? The only one in the village that's even on his level would be the Hokage herself. She scolded her. Hanabi sighed. Hokage level or not, his dodging needs some work, she said sarcastically to Shizen. Shizen cut her off. You actually managed to hit him? She asked in a stunned manner. Hanabi replied. No, he moved just enough to dodge it, but it left me in a compromising position. We nearly kissed. He thought I was trying to seduce him and seduce me back. He didn't touch me anywhere inappropriate, she quickly reassured her handler. I wanted to let him go and get away, but my body wouldn't obey me. It was so frustrating to lose control like that, she said embarrassedly. Later, when we had to train together, I went to chew him out for that and he ended up chewing me out instead. It turns out he was testing me and I flunked pretty badly. He told me any cute guy with a poison needle could kill me without a problem. He actually chastised me about sex like he was my father, telling me to wait until I knew when I wanted to spend the rest of my life with a guy before having sex, she said as she looked down in shame at herself. Shizen smiled at her. Well, I don't really like the way he tested you, but he is right about that whole waiting thing. I guess you can go, your father's going to be in the hospital tonight anyway. I'm sure you already know why, she said knowingly. Hanabi was dumbfoundedly shocked. No way! I can go? She stated unbelievingly. Shizen just smiled and said, Sure you can. Honestly, I feel you're taking your heiress duties too seriously all the time and you never go out and make friends. I've been waiting for you to ask me to go out for quite some time. she confessed. Hanabi was ecstatic. Shizen spoke. One word of the wise. When talking to Naruto, don't bring up his childhood. You wouldn't know this, but he had a harder childhood than you can imagine. It's best not to bring it up until he's ready to talk to you about it. She eyed her with concern. Thank you, Shizen, Hanabi said and turned to leave the laundry room. Oh, one last thing, Hanabi. No sex below the neck. She yelled playfully at her. Shizen, Hanabi said in offense. She picked up a nearby shirt and threw it at her. Shizen laughed. Naruto made it back to his house and realized that it was a total mess from Sakura demolishing his door that morning. He yawned and made a few shadow clones. Then he headed up to bathroom to get cleaned up. One clone summoned a 3-foot-high twister that he was moving around the room picking up all the pieces from the door. Two of the other clones pulled out another door from a nearby closet and started setting it on the door hinge. The last clone went to the kitchen and started boiling some water and getting the food out to make dinner. When the 3 clones finished cleaning, they poofed away. Soon afterwards, another Naruto clone came through the door holding a fishing net with some fish in it. The clone went right into the kitchen and dumped the fish into an aquarium near the stove and dissipated into smoke. The cooking clone stopped cutting up vegetables and walked over to the tank to see what he was going to cook tonight. Inside the 5-feet-long, 3-feet-high tank of water there was 2 small sizes red snappers, a 3-pound catfish and some clams at the bottom. The clone's eyes light up at the last fish in the tank. Cool, a blowfish, I've been wanting another one of these, he said out loud and quickly reached into the tank to retrieve the fish. He took the odd fish and transferred it into the 10-foot-long decorated fish tank in the living room and then went back to cooking. After 15 minutes, the real Naruto came back down from his shower wearing just a towel wrapped around his waist. He walked into the kitchen and asked his clone, "What's for dinner?" The clone replied, "A pretty good haul for today. We are having snapper. Oh, and we finally got another blowfish. It's in the tank in the living room." Naruto could dispel his clones and learn everything they knew, but it was a waste of chakra at times and had just taken to talking to them instead until he decided to release the jutsu. Cool, who knew they were so hard to catch? The real Naruto stated. Hanabi was standing outside Naruto's compound. It was almost exactly like she remembered it. A 6-foot-high cobblestone wall with moss all over it and a heavy oak door that was arched at the top with thick metal braces on it frames the entrance. The wall went all the way around the whole 6-acre compound. The only difference was there was yellow roses were growing all over the arch of the door and all the way down to the ground. Some form of shrubs had been planted in even spaces of about 5 feet apart running the length of the wall. She pushed the lever of the dungeon-like door and it opened easily. She was held in awe at the sight before her. She thought she had stepped into a fairy tale. The mansion was 3 stories high, about 150 feet wide, made of a dark oak-looking wood pillars and white stone. All the windows were made from cut crystal, each having a design on them of an animal or flowers. The front entrance was a small step up to the porch area that was about a 15 feet by 15 feet square stone slab. It was sententialed by 2 massive dark oak columns over a foot thick that had been carved to look like vines were growing up them. In front of each of the 2 columns stood a statue. They were facing each other. On the left side there was a statue of a man holding an orb in one hand that was stretched out like it was attacking the other statue. In the other hand of the statue was a kunai that it was holding with the blade down and close to its chest. The statue was partly painted. The hair had been painted blonde and the eyes were painted blue. The rest of the statue was unpainted, like it was a work in progress. The statue looked a lot like Naruto, but the hair was longer, the face a bit more mature. The other statue looks like something out of her worst nightmares. Standing 15 feet away from the first statue in front of the other column stood a huge fully painted statue of the 9-tailed demon fox. The demon fox was crouched in an attacking position like it was about to pounce the statue of the man. The statue looked like it was snarling and the many tails were fanned out behind it. One of the tails was halfway up the 2nd story of the mansion. She guessed the fearsome statue was about 16 feet long and 18 feet high at the highest tail. The 100 yards from the wall to the house was nothing but flowers everywhere. They were planted in neat 4-foot wide rows running parallel to the house all the way down the yard with carpet-like groomed bright green grass in between the rows. Every type and color of flowers she could imagine was there. There would be 5 to 7 feet of one type of flower, then another, then another. It looked like a flower farm. The only thing that looked out of place was a lone bamboo tree on the left side of the house. She started down the lone cobblestone path that led up to the house and got within about 30 feet of the front door before getting a bit nervous. The closer she got to the Kyubi statue, the more real it looked. She was starting to wonder if it a statue at all. It was so lifelike. She was about to step off the path and walk around the statue of the man to reach the door like a frightened child when Naruto opened the 2-wood carved door to the entrance of the house. Hanabi stopped dead in her tracks. "Hi Hanabi-chan." Naruto looked at her frightened expression and the way she was just about to step off the path to avoid the statue of the demon fox. He roared with laughter. Hanabi suddenly felt very silly for what she was about to do and looked down slightly embarrassed. Naruto walked off the porch and draped his arm around the neck statue of the Kyubi demon and pretended to give it a noogie. "This big guy didn't scare you, did he?" he asked with a chuckle. Hanabi gave a slight laugh at her own childishness. "Yes, I guess it did, just a little bit. It is so lifelike." "Where did you get it?" "Well, this one was a gift from Gaara. He made it with sand and then compacted it. Then used some weird fire jutsu to harden it into a statue. I just asked him for something that would keep away all the girls that were stalking me. He asked me what the most fearsome thing I could think of and I told him the 9-tailed fox. He made this and put it right in the middle of the walkway. Sai saw the statue and asked me if he could paint it. Sai is kind of weird like that. I told him he could and that's why it's so lifelike," he said with a smile. "Who's Sai?" she asked curiously. "Oh, you don't know him? He uses art as his jutsu. He paints stuff and it comes to life. That has to be one of the weirdest jutsu I've ever seen, but it is handy when he uses it," Naruto said. Hanabi eyed the other state. The paint job on it wasn't nearly as good as the other. It was very sloppily painted on the few parts that were painted. She asked him, "What about this statue?" "Oh, that one? I saw that one locked away in a vault while helping Tsunade move some stuff from her office. I asked her if I could have it to go with my 9-tailed demon fox. She told me that I couldn't have it as it belonged to all the people of the town, but she could probably get it loaned to me for a long time. So for my 19th birthday she had the statue delivered to my house and said it was on loan for 50 years. She told me it used to be in one of the parks in town before the 4th Hokage died and was removed after his death because it was making the children that played there sad. It just never got put back out after the town got over the 4th Hokage's death. I didn't like how grand the 9-tailed demon fox's statue looked as it all painted and this one wasn't. So I tried painting it myself," he explained. Naruto laughed as he threw his head back and said, "As you can tell, I'm no good at it. I was thinking of asking Sai to paint this one for me as well. Your home is so flowery, it's not what I expected," Hanabi said honestly and a bit shyly. Naruto said, "Yeah, me either. This place hadn't been lived in for over 16 years when I got the place. As you know, it wouldn't be lived until the heir of the estate became of age. Even though no one could live here, the hospital grew herbs for medicine and Ino's family grew rare flowers here to keep them safe where no one would mess with them. The council would sometimes borrow scrolls from the library inside, but largely the place has remained untouched," he said. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," she stated in awe. Naruto smiled. "I'm glad you like it. I'd give you a full tour of the place, but it will be getting dark soon," he said, still smiling. Hanabi looked at the sky. It was already turning a dark orange, signaling the coming of dusk. "Come on in, dinner is almost ready," he said, waving her inside the door. Naruto turned around and walked inside. Hanabi walked inside thinking it would be furnished like a palace. To her surprise, it really was, a ninja palace that is. She took off her shoes at the door and walked around while Naruto headed straight through a 10-foot arch into the nearby kitchen. She came into a 30 feet by 30 feet living area that had white walls and the same dark wood pillars going up the walls. The carpet was a creamy white color and was very shaggy and soft. Soft chairs and sofas were along the walls and the center of the floor was mainly open. There was a messy desk in the southwestern corner of the room with scrolls all over it and a scroll shelf next to it. There was a fireplace in the middle of the western wall with a mantel above it. On the mantel were a bunch of pictures in frames. Hanabi walked over to them. From the left to the right she looked at them. The first was a picture of Iruka-sensei, next was a picture Squad 7 with Naruto when he was younger scowling at Sasuke, then was a picture Jiraiya with a goofy smile. The next two pictures were slightly bigger than the others. The first bigger picture was a portrait of the fourth Hokage and the second was of his wife Kushina Uzumaki. These pictures looked much older than the rest and were in the center of the mantel. The next picture was of Naruto lying on the ground with Ino straddling him in a field of flower a moment before they kissed, and then was a picture of Naruto holding hands with her blushing sister Hinata outside Ichiraku's ramen. The next picture seemed to be the most recent and was of Naruto kissing Sakura on the cheek at a park. Sakura was smiling and they both seemed very in love in this picture. The last picture almost made Hanabi laugh. It was of Naruto when he was younger wearing the third Hokage's hat. He had such a huge boyish smile in it that it made Hanabi smile just from looking at the picture. There were 3 large portraits hanging on the wall over the fireplace of the first, second, and third Hokages. Under the picture of the second Hokage was a glass case about 3 feet wide and 5 inches tall. Inside was a broken sword and the small plaque on the case had one word engraved into it. Raijin. There were pictures and weapons all over the walls. There were several pictures of Naruto and Konohamaru. Mostly they were of them training or eating ramen. One picture that seemed kind of strange and out of place. It was a picture of a bridge, but that was until she read the name of the bridge was the Great Naruto Bridge. Wow, he's got a bridge named after him. That's kind of cool, she thought. The south wall had a huge 14 feet tall and wide bay window with a 10 feet long 4 foot tall aquarium sitting on it with all kinds of fish in it. She had seen stuff like this before. Her favorite fish to watch was the sucker fish that cleaned the glass and the one in this tank was huge. It was almost 3 pounds. There must have been over 100 fish in there and plenty of coral and other things in there for them to hide in. Naruto was leaning on the door frame that connected the kitchen to the living room with his arms crossed over his chest watching Hanabi looking at his fish tank remaining unnoticed. Naruto was wearing a longing genuine smile of love, like he was remembering a lost memory. Hinata really liked that aquarium too, he said honestly. Hanabi started. She was so intrigued with all the things in the room she had forgotten why she had come in the first place. Hanabi looked over at Naruto from across the room and smiled. It is so pretty in here. It's better than I imagined it would be. It's like being in the Great Museum at the Fire Lord's castle, but not as big, she said a bit overcome. Naruto had seen the longing look on her face before and knew she was going to want to question him for hours about all the things in the room. Naruto said, Judging by that look on your face I take it you want to eat dinner in here? She shyly smiled. Naruto walked over to the far corner of the room on the other side of the fireplace and pulled out a small dining table and put it in the middle of the open floor. I'll be back with the food in a minute, he said as he walked back to the kitchen. Hanabi walked over and sat down on her heels in front of the plain light-colored wooden table. Then she just fell onto back and just enjoyed the soft shaggy carpet. A few moments later Naruto and a clone came back. One held 2 plates of food and the other had 2 cups of tea. They set the table and Naruto sat down at the other side of the table. The clone went back into the kitchen. She got back up off the carpet a bit disappointed that Naruto hadn't taken longer while she got back to her sitting position in front of the table. Hope you like it, it's nothing special, just some rice and snapper with vegetables. My clone is getting the soup, he stated. The clone came back with the soup and left again. Itadakimasu, they both said before eating. Hanabi asked. Where did you get all this stuff? It looks like it would take a lifetime to gather it all things you have in here. Well, it would take weeks to explain where all of the stuff came from. Some of it's from the 3rd Hokage, some from the 4th Hokage, some from the 5th Hokage, some of it is from friends, and the rest I gathered from my time as a ninja. Have any item in mind you'd like to know more about? He asked while eating much slower than at lunch. Hanabi's eyes drifted over to the sword case under the portrait of the 2nd Hokage. Is that what I think it is in the case? Naruto gave her a confused look. Didn't see that one coming. You're asking about the same first thing Tintin wanted to know about. If you think it's the Raijin sword of the 2nd Hokage, then it's exactly what you think it is, he stated. Her eye went wide and she dropped her chopsticks. I thought that relic was lost long ago, she said, clearly stunned. Naruto said. Yes, it was, but as luck would have it, a mercenary for hire had it. He was contracted to kill the client we were contracted to protect years ago. A fight ensued and I thought he had killed Sakura-chan and Sasuke. I charged the guy with a Rasengan and took a hit from the lightning coming out of that sword. I broke through the lightning and drove my Rasengan through the blade, snapping it. I took the broken weapon to Tsunade after the mission was over and asked her if I could keep it. After I moved here, I mounted it on the wall under the 2nd Hokage's portrait. It just seemed like the right place to put it. He finished with a shrug of his shoulders. Hanabi blinked a few times. You broke the 2nd Hokage's sword, she stated in disbelief. Naruto gave her a concerned look. Please don't freak out like Tintin did, he said while grimacing. Hanabi was clearly stunned and said, No, I'm not going to freak out. Tu just didn't think that sword could be broken. Nor did I ever think it would be here and that you would have it. Naruto laughed. Well, it's technically not mine. It's like the statue of the Hokage out front, it's on loan, so I can't pass it on to my heirs if I ever have any, he said. Hanabi said with a grin. What do you mean if? I thought you were the town playboy, she teased. Naruto gave a slight chuckle before asking. Do you honestly believe that? I'm not a fool, Naruto. After that lecture you gave me, I kind of figured it was all the girls chasing you, not the other way around, she said with a rise and fall of her eyebrows. Naruto smiled. I'm glad to finally have another person to see the truth, he said thankfully. Hanabi got a bit serious and asked. If it's not too much to ask, what happened to make you break up with Ino, Hinata, and Sakura? To mean those pictures on the mantle over there. In each one of them you just seem, well, like you're with your soulmate, maybe not the Hinata one but defiantly the other two. Naruto got a longingly sad look on his face. Well, he sighed. I guess you should know since we are teammates now. He sighed again. I guess I'll start with Ino. My first real love, he said. Naruto set his gaze at the fish tank across the room and began drawing up long-forgotten images from deep within his mind. He closed his eyes and opened them slowly before speaking. You see, after I saved the village the last time, everyone knew I was the reason it was saved. It couldn't be denied. Well, with me being single, every single woman in the village seemed to want to get to know me better. I even had my own female fan club, he said, letting out a fake laugh of spite. At first I thought it was pretty cool to have a fan club like that. What a fool I was. All it meant was 50 young horny girls were organized to make my life a living hell. They wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't have any time to myself. I couldn't train or eat without looking over my shoulder wondering when the next one was going to spot me and try to drag me off to who knows where. One day I was running away from them and I ducked into Ino's flower shop to get away. Flashback. Naruto was very disheveled looking while hiding behind the counter of Ino's flower shop as a mob of 14 girls ran by. Ino looked down at him hiding behind her like a 5-year-old playing hide and seek and laughed. Women problems, Naruto? She stated through her giggles. More like mob problems, he said schizophrenically. Are they gone? He asked, a bit frightened. Yeah, they ran right by. she stated as she finally got a good look at Naruto. She had never seen Naruto so haggard. His white sage outfit was dirty and ripped up, his normally bright blue eyes were now a dull gray and were very, very bloodshot. He smelled like he hadn't bathed in a month. Ino's eyes grew worry with concern. Naruto, what a matter with you? You look horrible. How long has it been since you slept or eaten or for that matter bathed? She said the last part holding her nose. I managed to get a few bites of instant ramen Tuesday and I think I got about an hour of sleep Monday. The closest thing to a bath I've gotten was holding my breath underwater hoping to lose them sometime last week. He stated with his bloodshot eyes darting all over the place. She just stared at Naruto. You haven't eaten in 4 days and you have only had 1 hour of sleep in 5 days? What's the Hokage doing about this? She stated shocked and worried. She told me this was something I'd have to deal with on my own. That this wasn't likely to change for a while. He stated a very tired tone as he yawned. If you don't mind, I'm just going to take a nap, he said as he started to lay down on the floor. No! Naruto, I'll help hide you, but you have to take a bath first. It took quite a few slaps in the face for Ino to get Naruto aware enough to get him into the bathtub, but he was so weak and tired that Ino had to undress him herself. It was not like this was new to her, she did this all the time at the hospital as a medic. It was uncommon for her to be at the flower shop anymore. Normally she would have taken peeks at his manhood, but it just didn't feel right at the time. So she did her best to avoid looking at it, but it was hard to miss. She had to stay with him so he didn't fall asleep and drown. She scrubbed him clean and even shampooed his hair 2 times to get the smell out. She drained the tub and forced Naruto to get out and sit on the floor while she went to get some of her father's old cloths. She came back not a minute later and he was asleep on the floor. It took her a good 5 minutes to dress the sleeping Naruto. She did a medical check on him now that she could stand the smell of him. He was so pale and his skin was so warm. Not good, he's running a high fever and he's anemic from lack of food and too much stress. I can't let him sleep until I've gotten some food in him. Otherwise he could slip into a coma. I can put an IV into him to rehydrate his body after he's sleeping. She thought worriedly about Naruto. It took her a good 2 minutes of slapping him to get him awake enough to feed him some leftovers from the fridge and then she put him to bed in her room. She then left and used a jutsu to seal the house like what she normally did at night, but used a lot more chakra to make it stronger. She then went straight to the Hokage. She reached the door and was stopped by the guard. Please tell the Hokage that there is someone that needs her medical attention right away, she said, not wanting to say Naruto's name in case one of those girls was nearby. The went inside and the Hokage came out a moment later. Okay, who's the patent and what are their conditions? Tsunade asked. All business not here, just trust me and follow please. Ino leaped away heading back to her house. They reached the front door in a few minutes and Ino unsealed it. She led the Hokage to her bedroom where Naruto was sleeping in her futon. Tsunade was stunned at the way Naruto's face was so white and thin. She quickly checked him out. You're right, he is anemic and he's running a high fever. We need to get him to the hospital for a blood transfusion to make sure he doesn't slip into a coma, she said worriedly. Naruto woke up a day later in a hospital bed guarded by One of them went to get Ino, who was working at the hospital at the time. Ino came in wearing her white medic uniform. How do you feel, Naruto? She asked lightly. Like I just woke up from a nightmare, he admitted sleepily while rubbing his head. Well, it's over now. The Hokage took care of your little fan club problem. It seems 2 of them were chakra sensory ninjas and you didn't have a chance to hide from them. The Hokage has thrown them in jail and the others are way too afraid of the Hokage to even come near you, she stated with a smile. I didn't want anyone to go to jail. 2 just wanted to get some sleep and eat something at the very least, he said sadly. No, I'm afraid you're wrong there, Naruto. What those 2 ninjas did was a gross misuse of their powers against another Leaf Ninja. They deserve the 3 months they were sentenced to, she stated a bit more serious. Naruto blinked a few times and held out his hand trying to focus his eyes. Ino. I never said this before, but you're an angel for taking care of me. He said truly very thankfully. Ino gave him a friendly smile while filling out a medical chart. Actually you have, for the last 8 hours in your sleep. You just kept saying stuff like that. I made it hard to check up on you at first until I got used to it. She said honestly. Anyway, the Hokage will be here soon and Forehead will probably be by in a few hours during her shift. She was really worried about you. She just got back from her 2-week trip. Needless to say, the Hokage didn't tell her what happened. You know she'd fly off the handle. Ino said as she sat the medical charts on the table next to the bed and felt his forehead. No fever, that's a good sign. You hungry? It's a bit cold as I got it for you about 6 hours ago, but... Ino pulled out an Ichiraku ramen togo cup of noodles. The Naruto snatched it faster than Ino thought was humanly possible and inhaled it in a matter of seconds. Well, I'd like to say I'm surprised, but you talked about ramen in your sleep too. She said, then giggled. 30 minutes later the Hokage showed up. Hey brat. How are you feeling after getting your butt hooped by a bunch of girls? She smiled and Naruto knew it was fake and that she actually felt really bad about what happened. I'm a little lightheaded and a bit weak, but otherwise I'm okay. He said, looking at her while sitting up in the bed. Okay, let's hear it. How did they get you into this state? You didn't have a problem for the first 2 months. How did they run you this ragged? The Hokage asked. Well, they ambushed me after a really long training session when I overdid it and nearly ran myself out of chakra. Without my chakra, I could only run from them. No matter where I went, they seemed to find me. So I kept running and running until I ran into Ino at the flower shop. It gets a bit fuzzy from there. He said while squinting his eyes and grabbing his head. Sounds like what I got out of those 2 mastermind ninjas. They had spotters around me so you couldn't get close to me. I should have pressed the council to give them a year instead of 3 months. She said. Anyway, we need to come up with a way to get all those girls will leave you alone. The best way would be for you to get a powerful ninja girlfriend. She said knowingly. Naruto's eyes widened with horror. Please, no girlfriends. I think I've had enough of girls for a while. He stated and then looked around uncomfortably. Present company excluded. He added quickly. Well, then you need a pretend girlfriend. She stated bluntly. Who am I going to get to do that? The only single girls I can think of that don't seem to want to get involved with me are you two, Kurenai and Sakura-chan. He stated frustratedly. Actually, I've already talked it over with her and she agreed, if you decided you didn't want to get involved with anyone, that she would pretend to be your girlfriend. She said. Naruto eyed her carefully. Who is it? He asked. Me, Naruto. Ino said thoughtfully. You are a hero of this village. It's the least I could do, beside I could use some help carrying some shopping bags. She smiled. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. You really are an angel, Ino, and a lifesaver. He said as he fell back down on the hospital bed while looking at the ceiling. End of flashback. That's how it started with Ino. He said. We just started to pretend to be dating and then after 2 months we confessed our love for each other. We started dating for real from then on. None of the other girls, ninja or civilian, would bother us because we were so lovey-dovey in public. We could make the whole street we were walking down feel like a third wheel. He laughed. Those were some of the happiest days of my life. He said sadly as he was lost in thought. Hanabi had been quiet for some time, letting Naruto tell his story. Well, if it was all going so well, what happened? She asked, then bit her lips together, slightly ashamed she was pressing him for more information. Oh, that. Naruto said as he rolled his eyes and got a very sad look on his face. Well, Ino's family has this weird jutsu to read minds, you know. They can read someone's minds if they touch them, not just read their mind. They can touch you for a few seconds and tell you everything that happened to you in the last month. I was training one day before she normally showed up to train with me and I got distracted. I fell out of a tree and hit my head like a goofball and knocked myself out. Ino came to train with me not long after and found me on the ground with a small head wound. She panicked and used her mind-reading jutsu on me. It is a jutsu that should never be used under stress. It backfired on her. She ended up living my life from the age of 5 to the age of 10 as best as Tsunade can figure. I doubt you know it, but I had an unimaginably hard life when I was young. I'm not ready to tell you about that yet though. The result was Ino's mind was shattered. Tsunade told me to stay away from her, but I wouldn't listen. I came to see her when no one was guarding her room. When I saw her sleeping in the hospital room, I came up to her and kissed her and said, "I love you, my angel." Her eyes popped open like I had stabbed her. She started screaming for the nightmares to go away and that she never wanted to see my face or the villagers again. She was totally out of her mind. Her words hurt me so badly. Two didn't make it 20 feet down the hall before breaking down and Sakura found me and had to take me home. After that I never went to see her until the Hokage said it was okay. It killed me to do that. Every day I wanted to see her face and tell her how much I loved her. Every day I waited for the Hokage to come see me and tell me that she was all better, and every day she never came or sent word. After 2 weeks of thinking of nothing but her, it became hard to recall exactly what her face looked like. How could I forget what she looked like? I did nothing but think of her. I barely ate, I almost never slept, and I hardly moved. How could my mind be fuzzy when trying to recall my angel face? I got my photo album out and had to constantly keep looking at her pictures to remember her face. Each time I reminded myself of her face with the pictures, I had to look at it sooner the next time to remember it again. Naruto sighed long and deep. He pulled his knees to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. He took a few uneasy ragged breaths and stared at the floor near him. Two was sinking from depression into madness. I took all the negatives I had of my pictures of my angel Ino and went to the Photoshop. I got hundreds of each one made and posted them up all over my bedroom. Everywhere I looked was Ino, the floor, the bed, the ceiling, and across every inch of every wall of my bedroom all I could see was my angel Ino. I don't know how long I spent in that room after putting the pictures up, but it felt like a lifetime. All I do know is Tsunade found me and admitted me to the hospital's psychiatric ward. I heard the medic tell Tsunade I was close to insanity and had clinical depression. I spent a month in the hospital getting treatment, not unlike Ino. The Hokage told me if I really loved her, to let her go and move on, but I couldn't just let her go so easily. I waited while she underwent treatment. He said as tears formed at the rims of his eyes. After 3 months of not being able to see her, the Hokage told me I could go into the same room as her, but I couldn't speak or move. I just had to stand there, and if she freaked out I had to leave. Well, she made it 3 minutes in the room with me before she showed signs of a breakdown, so I left. That had to be the hardest 3 minutes of my life, too. Naruto was talking through clenched teeth of frustration and tears were steaming out of his brilliant blue eyes, and it took him a few moments to speak. To just stand there looking at the woman I loved more than my life, while she was looking at me like I was the scariest thing she'd even seen. She was trying to bear looking at me, bearing my very sight. I'd been dreaming of holding her again. I can still smell her scent of random flowers. It took everything. Everything I had not rush over there and crush her lips with mine and tell her that I loved her and I'd do anything to make her well so we could be together again. Naruto's breath was coming in sobs as he head fell to his knees. Hanabi was stunned watching Naruto cry on his knees. She had no idea what to say or do. She couldn't believe how passionate his words were and deep how his frustration was. How can he ever smile with loss like that? She couldn't help but think. She felt something cold on her face. She touched his cheeks and felt her own tears on them. When Naruto finally had calmed himself down, he began to speak again in a very sad voice with no frustration anymore. Every week for 2 months I'd came and sat in the room with her and she would get a little better each time. Naruto sounded like a shell of his former self. Every week she would be a bit less fearful, she could bear my sight for a few minutes longer. Every Sunday I both looked forward to and dreaded seeing my love, my angel. Because every week she may have been getting better, but also every Sunday I lost another piece of my hope that we would be able to return to those happy days. Every time I saw the fear and sorrow in her eyes, I lost a piece of myself. He confessed. At the end of the 2 months, Tsunade said she could go home, but that she would probably always feel pain when looking at me and she would have nightmares fits from time to time. Naruto sat there very quiet. He had stopped crying and looked sadder than anyone Hanabi had ever seen. I had to eventually make the hardest choice of my life, he said as he clenched his arms tightly. I had to do what Tsunade told me from the beginning, let her go and not see her anymore. I'd only cause us both pain if I tried to continue our relationship. I went to her house and asked her father to speak to her. He refused me and asked me to leave. I had already steeled my nerves and convictions. I told him that I was going to see Ino one way or the other. I regret that threat now, but it was the only way at the time, he said. He led me to her room and told me I had 10 minutes before he came in after me. I thanked him and knocked on the door before entering. There I saw my freighted little angel, sitting on her bed reading a book. She looked at me and her eyes went wide with fright and she started mumbling to herself, going through some mental routine before eventually calming down enough to sit still. I waited quietly until she was calm. I told her, Ino, I don't know if you even remember me from before the accident. How in love we were, how much we cared for each other. I always hoped you would, but I've lost it. I've lost my will to hurt you every time you look at me. I see the fear in your eyes and it's killing me, it's leaving me an empty shell of a person. My angel, you're still the most beautiful woman on this earth to me. I will always love you, and if you ever come to love me again. Ino cut me off. I never stopped loving you. It's just the nightmares of your childhood. They keep me awake till I'm deranged. I'm scared to sleep and you only remind me of the nightmares, she said, barely holding on to her sanity. I know, it's killing me to think of a life without you. At least you only see them when you sleep. I dream about life without you and then awake to find it's true every day. I live in waking nightmare, I said, heartbroken and in defeat. She told me, I know what you came for. She still knew me, she knew I just wanted to kiss her, to hold her again. I'd waited so long to have her in my arms again, and she invited me, though it would cause her nightmares that would make her scream. She loved me that much. I was overwhelmed. I wanted to kiss her so badly, but the thought of causing her pain of any kind would destroy me. I knew what she was offering me. She was offering me much more than what I wanted and something I always dreamed about. Naruto said she offered me the chance to make love to her, at the likely cost of her sanity. Naruto's puffy swollen eyes began shedding tears again. I wanted her so badly. I both regret not taking her and I'm thankful I didn't at the same time. I just held her and cried. I couldn't help it. She will always be my angel. Naruto took long a moment before speaking again. In the past 3 years I've only been able to greet her once, in my garden, while she picked the flowers she always smelled like. I always watch her when she comes. I always want to talk to her, to tell her even now she's always on my mind, but I cannot. Not at the cost of hurting her with the nightmares and driving me into madness of my own grief, he said, then paused, lost in his own waking nightmare. Hanabi didn't want to ask it, but she just couldn't help it. How long ago did you greet her in the garden? Naruto sighed. About 6 weeks ago. She's still just as beautifully as ever. She managed to greet me back, but I could still tell it was hard for her. I could still hear the fear and sorrow in her voice. She couldn't even look at me. I cursed myself for my weakness of talking to her again, for hurting her. I had a clone follow her that day and she did fine. She is pretty much back to normal to everyone, but me. It looked like she was fine all day and my clone watched her sleep. 2 hours into her sleep she woke up screaming again. My clone could only bear the sound for a few seconds before releasing itself. That was my angel, my true love, my Ino. He confessed and stayed silent for a few minutes. His eyes were red, swollen and bloodshot as he clutched his knees in a sitting position. Naruto suddenly said while looking at Hanabi. "Thank you for listening to me. It's been a long time and I never really had anyone to tell that to. After Jiraiya died, I kind of lost one of my great guiding lights on those types of matters. He may have been a pervert, but when it came to life matters he was very wise. Tsunade was never one to bring sensitive things like that to, and my only other person to tell was Sakura-chan, and that was Ino's rival. I couldn't tell her. I've always had no one to tell. I can't believe he kept that bottled up for so long. How could he bear it? Is this what it means to be the hero of the Hidden Leaf Village? Is it merely a title to set him on a pedestal while ignoring that he's human while glorifying his accomplishments?" Hanabi was lost in thought. "I guess I should move on to how I ended up dating your sister if you think you can handle it." Naruto finally looked at her for the first time since he started speaking about Ino and not through her. Hanabi spoke honestly. I don't think I want to know if it's as tragic as your Ino story," she barely managed to say. Naruto gave her a weak smile. "No, it's nowhere near as bad as my Ino story."
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.